This is part 2 of our Let There Be Light series as we lead up to the big day, Christmas Day. We're talking about light. Pastor Derek preached brilliantly last Sunday, and this is part 2 of our light series. A couple of months ago, a good friend who's not sitting too far away, we were having a conversation about something that I was finding difficult, and I was maybe overthinking a little bit, and she just said to me, as a really kind friend does, she said, "Who do you think you are?" I was a bit like, well, that seems a bit harsh. But what she was doing was saying, "Who do you think you are?" And she was reminding me of how much bigger God is in the situation. And I was like, actually, you are totally right. Who do I think I am? That's really important. And it's really important for each one of us this morning that we have a right view of who we are. If I was to ask you today, who do you think you are? I wonder how you would answer me. In all honesty, those narratives that go around in your mind, those things that you tell yourself, who do you think you are? It really, really matters for every part of your life, who you think you are, how you see yourself. But I'm going to share some really good news with you this morning. Who's ready for a bit of good news? Oh, always, aren't we? Yeah, bring it on. We have a lot of bad news, don't we, on the TV and all in our social media. What about some good news this morning? We come to church for the good news, right? Yeah, because there is a lot of good news to share. And the good news is that I'm going to share something with you that if you really grasp it this morning, will change how you view yourself forever. Sounds all right, that, doesn't it? Worth getting out of bed for, I think, but we'll see. This is a passage that from the book of Matthew, and this is what Jesus says to his followers, and this is what he's saying to each one of us this morning as well. And for some of you who are quite familiar with the Bible, this is something that you may have read many, many times, but I just pray that this morning this lands fresh with you today, that you really, really hear what Jesus is saying to you, and that it transforms your mind and it transforms your heart forever. And this is what he says. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp or put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. So who are we this morning? Thank you, Pastor Derek. Pastor Derek was listening. Who are we this morning? You are the light of the world. And it's always been God's plan that his chosen people would shine brightly like a light in the darkness of this world. Theologian Tom Wright says this: God intended, through Israel, who are his chosen people, to shine his bright light into the world's dark corners, not simply to show up evil, but to enable people who were blundering around in the dark to find their way. So all through the Old Testament of the Bible, we see that God's heart for his chosen people is that they would shine his light for all to see. The problem is, as we read the ups and downs of the Old Testament, is that the people often wandered into darkness themselves. So they were destined and called to be bright lights for God, but often they got sucked into the darkness and the evil and became no different to anybody else in the world. And God was constantly calling his people back to him, back to their true calling to be light. And that's what Jesus says to us today. Because if you're a Christian in here this morning, if you're a Jesus follower, Jesus says to you, you are the light of the world. And your job and your call is to shine brightly so that in this dark world, people see Jesus through you. I wonder if you remember this song. I'm going to play a little song on the screen, perhaps from your school days. Feel free to raise, get singing, come on. You can do better than that. Thank you, Finley. 20% effort there. That was all right. Thank you. Some of you more. That was great. Listen, this is why we get up in the morning and come to church, right? So we can have dancing light bulbs. What more could you want on the 7th of December in the morning than a dancing light bulb? But that's all about shining, isn't it? And sometimes I think we can think that shining like a light is a little bit twee. It's for the kids. It's cute, isn't it? It's something the giants do. But as we get older, we're not into dancing light bulbs. We're not about being lights and shining and sparkling as if we're on Strictly. What's that about? But I want to just explain briefly this morning what it looks like to shine brightly for Jesus. And not with sequins and like spotlights, unless that's the kind of thing that you like. But actually, what does it mean to be bright and shining for Jesus in this dark, dark world? Because who knows it's dark and who knows they need a light? It's true though, isn't it? So, first of all, the first thing to consider about being a light is about connecting in to the source. There is no light without Jesus. So we're not talking about be light of the world, be bright, be shiny in your own charismatic personality. Shine away on social media for all to see. Without Jesus, there's no light. So the very first thing is we connect to the source that is the source of our light. It says Matthew 4:16, quoting from the book of Isaiah, it says this: "The people living in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light has dawned." And that was a prophecy hundreds of years before the coming of Jesus, born as a baby in a stable in the back of beyond, where the prophet could see the coming of a great light. And he was predicting in this world of darkness that a great light was coming. And that light was to be Jesus. And we celebrate, don't we, in this time of Advent, which means arrival. We're looking towards the celebration of that great light. And we choose to celebrate on the 25th of December, Christmas. We choose to celebrate this baby who was born to a teenage girl, but who was the king of all the universe. Come as a human, but to shine a great light for all to see. And Jesus called himself the light of the world. So before he said to us, you are the light of the world, he said, I am the light of the world. And I love that Lisa shared that story about the man in John 9. Because in my notes it says, the story of the man born blind. But it says in brackets, no time, don't read it. So that's brilliant because Lisa's helped me out there. Give me an extra little bit of time in my message. But that was really key for me because in that moment when Jesus is demonstrating for all to see what it means to receive Jesus, to go from darkness to light, to open our eyes, in that moment he chooses to say, I am the light of the world. And then the man sees, wow, imagine being there for that moment where the first time ever somebody who couldn't see is able to see. I mean, we go, great, yeah, wonderful. Imagine a Jesus who can do that, who can touch eyes, and suddenly this man who'd never seen in his whole entire life could see everything. And in that moment, Jesus says, I am the light of the world. And what I've done for this man, I can do for anybody spiritually who comes to me. Because what he does is he takes us out of darkness and he brings us into his glorious light. If you have an open heart to him and you ask him to come into your life, it's like the light is switched on. And all of a sudden you see things differently. You see yourself differently. You see your life differently. You see your purpose differently. You see God differently. You see the world differently. Everything changes when you encounter Jesus. Think of another story as well in Acts chapter 9, and it's a story of a man called Saul, who's later known as the Apostle Paul. And this was a very, very angry, violent man. And he's on his way towards Damascus on this road. And you might have heard of the phrase Damascus Road experience. Well, this is where it comes from. So he was on this road towards Damascus to kill Christians. He was furious. He was filled with hatred and rage. He just wanted to kill anybody that followed Jesus because he believed so passionately that they weren't right and it wasn't the right thing. And so wherever he went, people were terrified of him because he was killing people and he thought he was doing the right thing. And all of a sudden, a bright light shines from heaven and he falls to the ground. And Jesus says, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And all of a sudden, Saul loses his sight. Imagine that. You're just going about your day. Hopefully none of us go about that kind of day very often, but he was there, filled with hatred, a man on a bit of a mission, and all of a sudden he's there on the floor, humbled. He can't see a thing. And his friends take him to a local home, and he stays there for 3 days, and he can't see, he can't eat, he's not drinking. I just wonder what he was sat there thinking about. For 3 days, he couldn't see a thing. He was in the darkness. And it reminds us a little bit of Jesus dying on the cross and then spending 3 days in the tomb. A time of waiting and reflecting. Maybe Saul reflected on his life. Maybe he thought, have I been mistaken? I've been killing all these Christians, and yet I've just encountered Jesus for myself. Maybe in that time of darkness, Jesus did something incredible in his heart. And then this brave man called Ananias is called by God to go and pray for Saul. Not sure I would have wanted that job. I don't know about you. You know, scared to death of this guy that was likely to kill him. But he was obedient. And he went and he prayed for Saul. And as soon as he prayed for him, scales fell from his eyes and he could see. And he was baptized with the Holy Spirit. The Spirit of Christ filled him. And from that day, he was transformed. And he became the person that we know as Paul the Apostle, who wrote most of the New Testament of the Bible, planted churches all over the place. He was filled and fired up for Jesus because he'd been through this incredible conversion and transformation where he was blind and then he could see. And this is what Jesus does for us. He gives us that laser sharp focus. He takes us out of the darkness and he brings us into the light. So it's important that we connect to Jesus as our source. Before we do anything else and think about anything else, we connect to the light of the world. You know, this world teaches us to shine brightly, but from ourselves. You know, like there's a pressure, isn't there, for people to be seen on social media and have lots of followers and just to kind of like show off, make visible their lives, that they're having the best life ever, they're living the best life. And celebrities are trying to climb that ladder and be seen and influence, but the light's all coming from them. It's not coming from the true source. It's coming from a manufactured artificial light. Makes me think of how as human beings over the centuries, we've tried to take control of our own lives, haven't we? So once upon a time, when the sun came up, we went to work in the fields. When the sun went down, we went to sleep. We were dependent on the natural light that was the sun and the moon, and we had natural rhythms of life and healthy boundaries, and, you know, we kind of lived by the seasons. And then human progress, we started to create artificial light. We started to create electricity, and so we were able to be in control of our own light. So if you want to get up at 2 a.m. and do some work, you can do, because you press the switch and boom, the light is there and off we go. And in some ways, listen, I'm not complaining because I don't really want to be back in the day where you had to wait for the sun to come up and then at 4 in the afternoon you had to go to sleep or whatever. Because, there are blessings, aren't there, to being able to put on the light whenever you want. But it is a picture to me of how we as humans have tried to control our lives, and we've pushed God out of it because we've gone, doesn't matter, day and night, doesn't matter. We can work 24 hours if we want. We can go to Trafford Centre whenever we want. We can do this, that, and the other. And now we've got the internet, so we can learn about anything we want to. So we've grabbed hold of this life and we've made it human shaped. But in doing so, we're saying, so we don't need you, God, thank you very much. We don't need the sun and the moon. It doesn't really matter what it does, because we've got an artificial form of light. And so the world lives by artificial light in every sense of the word, in the word. Every sense of the word, because what we do is we try and shine brightly from our own brilliance, our own talent, our own education, our own money, our own possessions. We're trying to shine from what we have created and not what God has done. You know, talking about light, just as a bit of an aside, the brilliant thing is, in the last book of the Bible, Revelation, it says that one day we won't even need a sun or a moon because God himself will be our light. Gosh, imagine that. It says that this isn't really connected, but I just feel like this is so exciting. It just says this: there will be no more night. They will not need the light of a lamp or the light of the sun, for the Lord God will give them light, and they will reign forever and ever. Wow, so one day, God's going to reign again over everything, and he's going to be our sun. He's going to be our source of light. You know, I was thinking about glow-in-the-dark stars this week. Did anyone have them when they were a kid? You know, like you got that little packet, didn't you, of green stars, and then you were super excited to get them on your ceiling. And they didn't really do anything, did they? Because they weren't shining in and of themselves. You just stuck them all over your ceiling with a bit of help from a parent. But what did you need to do to make them shine? Put the big light on. That's what you had to do, didn't you? So they didn't shine at all until big light goes on. Now, as an adult now, I think, what a waste of electricity. Because you'd put your big light on for about an hour just to get the stars to shine, wouldn't you? You weren't even in the room. You were just warming up the stars for nighttime. And then what you do is you turn the light off, and then the stars shine for a bit. And then they start to get darker and darker, don't they? And they've got something called phosphors in them. And we've got little phosphors in our teeth and our nails as well, which is why sometimes they shine under a black light. But these phosphors don't have any kind of source themselves, but what they do is they absorb a different light source, and it gets all these little kind of chemicals excited and energetic, and then they absorb that light and they emit that light for a little while. But they don't have their own source of light. So that once they've shone for a little while, they go dark again. And I think that's quite a good picture of what it's like for us, is we don't have a light source of ourselves, but we can absorb the light of Christ through our relationship with him. And it gets us energized, and he fills us with his light. And then when we shine for him, it's him that people are seeing. It's not a man-made, it's not artificial, it's the true source of light. You see, Jesus said to the crowd in John 12:36, believe in the light while you have the light, so that you may become children of light. So we believe first, and then we become. We believe in the light, who is Jesus, and then we become the light. So we don't become first and try and become something ourselves, but we believe first in the great light, and then we become. So thinking back to Matthew 5, that verse that we read at the beginning, but in the Amplified version, it just extends it a little bit. It says this: you are the light of Christ to the world. So in other versions, it says you are the light of the world, which is still true. But I love the Amplified version for saying you are the light of Christ to the world, because it focuses us. What are we shining? Why are we shining? Well, it's all about Christ, and he shines through us. Tony Evans says this: if you want to reflect Christ, you have to absorb Christ by cultivating an intimate relationship with him. Thinking back to those glow-in-the-dark stars, absorbing Jesus by cultivating that relationship with him. And that takes time to get to know him, to read the Bible, to pray, to spend time in his presence. You know, some of you may be thinking, oh, worship was quite long this morning. You know, like we were stood up for probably about half an hour. You know, can we not speed things up a little bit and just do 2 nice songs and then straight into the message, and then we can get home for our dinner a little bit earlier? And it might just be that you're thinking, I don't really get why we need to spend so much time. But what we're doing is we're spending time with Jesus. So if we're just singing, yeah, we probably could do a couple of songs and be done with it. But if we're encountering Jesus and his presence, then we really want to linger. We don't want to rush off. We're absorbing him and his light, and we're being shaped and changed by him. And if that's not something you're feeling, that's okay. But just say when you come into worship, God, help me to understand what I'm doing here. Help me to give you praise. And I want to experience your presence. I want to have a real encounter of you. I don't want to go through the motions. That's really boring. Church is really boring without Jesus, just going to say. But it is. We do pretty much the same thing most weeks. You know, we have maybe a good message and a few. But with Jesus right in the middle of it all, it's powerful, life-changing. And part of that is about the team here doing their best to pray for you and to minister to you and help you. But it's a two-way street. So you can't sit there like, go on then, impress me. Because you won't be impressed. I can guarantee it. But if you've come with an open heart to Jesus, he can do anything he wants. And he can even talk through me. And he can, somebody could be up here leading worship with a terrible cold, and yet Jesus could still do something great. It's not about us, it's about him. And so we've talked about connecting to the source. The next thing I want to say is about how we shine. So in that passage, Jesus says, you are the light of the world. That's who you are. That's your identity. Okay, so if that's who I am, then what do I do? And Jesus gives us an instruction then. So he says, you are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Tony Evans says that light has only one job: to shine. It's not hard. And so Jesus is saying, so you are the light of the world, and the instruction is shine. And in Bible times, the light of the world was a phrase that was used quite commonly. It wasn't something that Jesus used, that was something that he'd made up, that was new. But it was a title that people used for the best of the best Jewish leaders, the religious leaders, the rabbis. So a few of the elite rabbis who were particularly intelligent, particularly brilliant leaders and wise and knowledgeable. And what people would do is call them lamps of the universe. He's a lamp of the universe. Or they'd say he's a light of the world. But it was just for one or two, yeah? So only the elites were called the light of the world, nobody else. And then Jesus turns that completely on its head, because he's talking to ordinary men and women, fishermen, working people, people who haven't got a lot of knowledge, haven't necessarily had the best education. And he says to them, you are the light of the world. Wow. That must have elevated the way they saw themselves all of a sudden. It's not just the greatest rabbis that are the light of the world, but you and me are the light of the world. And he's saying, so you shine. What a challenge and an encouragement, I think, in equal measure. So how do we shine? Let's read from Ephesians chapter 5. I'm going to start from verse 8. And this is a passage written by the Apostle Paul. So we talked about his conversion earlier, didn't we, as Saul on that Damascus road. And he's talking now about what it actually means to live in the light. So we're going to go from verse 8. I'm just going to skip a few of the verses. And he says this. And this is the practical bit now. This is the bit about, okay, so we get that we are light of the world. We get that we're meant to shine Christ to the world, but how? How do we do that? Well, this is what Paul says. Verse 8. Great. Thank you. For you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Live as children of light. For the fruit of the light consists in all goodness, righteousness, and truth. And find out what pleases the Lord. Have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. It is shameful even to mention what the disobedient do in secret. But everything exposed by the light becomes visible, and everything that is illuminated becomes a light. This is why it is said, wake up, sleeper, rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil. I'd encourage you to read that whole passage and the verses before that as well, because Paul is very clear that we are to have nothing to do with darkness. And that's challenging. Have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness. It's not all right to be a Christian and have a little bit of darkness on the side. Sometimes we're stupid. We think God can't see us. We think that we're visible on a Sunday and we put on our best Christian performance and persona, and we forget that he's there in every detail of every day. Wherever we go, whatever we do, he's there. And he loves us, and he wants the best for us. And he's saying, live as children of the light. Don't dabble in darkness and think it'll be all right. It's not all right. When you are a child of the light, you are to be all in child of the light. And listen, we're human. We get it wrong sometimes and we say, sorry, God, I'm really sorry. He forgives us and we start again. It's okay. But what we shouldn't do is go out of our way to associate with darkness. It's dangerous. And that's why young people, when you're starting to think about who you're going to date and who you're going to spend time with and who maybe you want to be with one day, let's not be children of light getting with people of darkness. There's a reason why we're meant to stick with the light. And it might be even now as I'm saying that, the Holy Spirit is just putting a little bit of something in your heart, just making you feel a bit uncomfortable perhaps. That's okay. Sometimes the Holy Spirit does that. He just kind of unsettles us a little bit because he's saying, you know, that's not good for you, right? So stop it. And you can actually take control right now and you can say, no more. I am not going to associate with the deeds of darkness. I am going to live fully as a child of the light. Because how can I have a day of darkness on a Tuesday and then try and shine for Jesus on a Wednesday? Doesn't work like that. Integrity is about being everything on the inside and the outside, and it all matches up. So we don't have a front that is the light, and behind the scenes we're a bit of darkness. People see through it. We've got to aim to be transparent so that we truly shine the light of Christ to all who know us. Let's take that as a challenge this morning. What I love as well about this passage is that Jesus challenges us in the best possible way. Going back to Matthew 5, where he says, you're the light of the world. And he says, a city on a hill cannot be hidden. And he's talking about Jerusalem, a city on a hill that was high up, that all could see. He's saying, you're meant to be like that. You're meant to not just be a little light in the corner, being kind and sweet and nice. You're meant to be a light on a stand so that everybody can benefit from the light in you. He's saying, elevate yourself for the right reasons. You don't light a lamp and then you put it under a little basket because you don't want it to shine too brightly. That makes no sense. What he's saying is, if you light a lamp, put it up as high as you can on a stand so that everybody can benefit from the light. And that's what he says to us, church, this morning, is he says, don't be a little bit of a light. Don't hide under a bit of a basket because you're trying to be humble and you don't want to put yourself out there and you don't want to be seen as a show-off. No, if your heart is right before Jesus, then you get elevated in the best possible way. Let Jesus shine through you so that everybody can benefit from the light that he's put inside you. And it's a funny thing because it messes with our heads a little bit, doesn't it? Because we want to be humble and that's important, but we also are told to let our light shine. Thank you. Now I'm going to show you a picture. I don't really want to. We're running out of time and also it's quite embarrassing, but Steve told me I had to, so every so often I'm obedient to my husband and I just, So when I was in school, one of my finest moments was playing the role of Glinda, the Good Witch of the North. I can't see. Let's just take it off quick. I'm showing you really because of the height of the crown. It's important for the story that you can see how heavy that crown is, how tall it is. Yes, so I wasn't really anything like Ariana Grande, sadly, but I did my best. And that was my moment in Wizard of Oz. And our drama teacher was on a budget. And she said, right, what I want to do is I want you to be elevated through the stage. So it was like a school stage, and underneath there was like a room underneath, and they sawed like a square in the stage. And what they wanted to do was to get me from the room under the stage onto the stage while I was singing, so that I could beautifully, basically we didn't have a bubble or any way of getting me like to float through the sky. So the next best thing was to elevate me through the stage and onto the stage. Great, I'm all for it. So her idea was, right, we get 2 of the strongest lads, we get a plank of wood, and what you're going to do is you're going to stand on the plank of wood, like that, and then these lads on 1, 2, 3 are going to lift you up, and you're going to get onto the stage and sing your song to the Munchkins. Now, you can imagine how that went. Not great. So I was a little bit lighter, but not much, and I think these poor lads were like sweating and doing their best to like lift me. And so when we did it in rehearsals, basically I got as far as to be able to cling to the edge of the stage. And then I had to get my leg and somehow like belly flop onto the stage. And then I got there and I had to correct my crown and dust myself off and sing, "You're out of the woods, you're out of the dark." Not brilliant. So then we had like, okay, that's not going to work. So then we decided that she decided we were going to have some kind of pulley system. So we must have spent a bit of money on that. So basically, there was like a little bit of wood, and it was somehow linked to a pulley. And so I had to stand on the wood, and then the same boys, bless them, had to, like that. And then the pulley went, like that, and then kind of got to the top of the stage, and I had to step out like all was well. Apart from the fact that it was dreadful, it was noisy, and the little snowflake was like that. So you could see me coming before I was there, and I was singing still, out of breath, a little bit sweaty, and managed to make my entrance and be beautiful, and not brilliant. I'll tell you this story. You can take that off, thank you. I'll tell you this story because it reminded me, as I was thinking this week, about what it's like when we try and elevate ourselves. Doesn't look great. It's not a good look. You know, when we try and find ways to make ourselves look great. I know I'm going to do this. And sometimes we say all the right things and do all the right things, but the truth is in our heart, our motives are not right. Because we're looking to be recognized, we're looking to be visible, we're looking to this, that, and the other. And what happens is when we do that, in our own artificial light, again, just trying to get ourselves to be seen, it doesn't glorify Jesus, and it doesn't look good on us either. It's clumsy. What's really beautiful is when people surrender their lives to Jesus and say, "Lord, I'll do anything. Seen or unseen, doesn't matter. But just use my life." And then when Jesus shines through us, anything can happen. And even better is, we don't get the credit. He gets the credit. And that's the whole point. It says in 2 Corinthians 4, talks about having a treasure in jars of clay. Because we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. So Paul, he's doing well this morning. He's written about a jar and a treasure. And in Bible times, jars of clay were really common. They were very ordinary, quite cheap, often quite fragile, so they break quite easily. People use them for all sorts of things. But they also used them to hide treasure inside, because nobody would ever think there was treasure in such an ordinary looking jar. So if you wanted to hide your precious jewels or your money, you'd put it in this ordinary jar of clay so that nobody would come and find it. And what Paul is saying, this man that used to think so much of himself was on a mission to persecute Christians, and yet had been humbled by encountering Jesus. He's saying that we're jars of clay, and that's okay. We're not meant to try and, put sequins on our jars and paint them beautiful colours so that everyone sees how amazing we are. It's all right to be a jar of clay. That's the point, actually. Because the treasure of Jesus that we have within us shines so much brighter. People don't look to the jar of clay, they look to the treasure inside. I think about John the Baptist. He's quite key in the early Gospels. He was a cousin of Jesus. And he had a ministry where he was preparing for Jesus, and people were going out to the desert to see him, and he was preaching and he was baptizing them. And, lots of people knew who John the Baptist was, but he knew exactly who he was and who he wasn't. Because he said, I'm not the light. I'm preparing the way for the light who is coming. He says, I'm a witness of the light. And that's what we're to be, is we're to be a witness of the light. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others. Why? So that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. So we connect to the source that is Jesus, we shine his light, and we become a witness to the world of who Jesus is and what he can do. And one way that he does that is through good deeds. That's what it's telling us. Don't know about you, but good deeds sounds a little bit boring to me. It sounds a little bit like a little bit of a charitable action, or helping an old lady across the road, or we misunderstand the power of what Jesus is talking about here. What does he mean by good deeds? He's not just talking about being a little bit nice and hoping that people see Jesus. Tony Evans helps us. He's a Bible scholar. He helps us to think about this. He says good works or good deeds are connected to the kingdom and a work of God. They are righteous and biblically authorized actions that are beneficial to others and for which God gets the credit. So as we do things that Jesus asks us to do and are according to the Bible and are empowered by the Holy Spirit, that's when people are massively blessed by our lives and changed by our lives, but also God gets the credit. And Fran was brilliant this morning. I thought Fran expressed so brilliantly what it is to shine the light of Christ in her role as a social worker in all the details of all the moments of the day. That's what we're talking about. That people will see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. As Fran was talking this morning, I was just so moved by her gratitude to God for being in every moment of every day. And I was like, yeah, that's a life that is shining for Jesus. People will see her good deeds and they'll be inspired by how she manages when things are dark and difficult. She still has a hope. She still speaks words of encouragement to people. She's praying for people. Wow, let that be a challenge to us all today. In whatever we do tomorrow and the rest of the week, that we allow Jesus to shine through us so that our good deeds point people to Jesus. People praise the Lord because of us. Wow, what a call. You are the light of the world. People will praise God because of your life and how you do every day. Don't know about you, but I want that more. I want that more. It says this in Philippians chapter 2. And this is in the Message version. From verse 14, it says this: do everything readily and cheerfully, no bickering, no second guessing allowed. Go out into the world uncorrupted, a breath of fresh air in this squalid and polluted society. Provide people with a glimpse of good living and of the living God. Carry the light-giving message into the night. So I'll have good cause to be proud of you on the day that Christ returns. How do we carry that light-giving message into the night? By following Jesus every day and asking him to shine through our lives. by renouncing the deeds of darkness, anything of darkness in our lives, and committing to follow Jesus into the light.